want to welcome everybody to this work session, Optimizing Business Performance at the MOA. We need to go around the table and identify ourselves for the record. Bill?
Bill Starr, Assembly.
Harriet Drummond, Assembly.
Doug Gutierrez, Assembly. Patrick Flynn, Assembly.
Dick Trainey, Assembly.
Paul Holman, Assembly.
Jennifer Johnson, Assembly.
David Ryan, Municipal Controller.
Gail Turner, Acting IT Director.
Lucinda Mahoney, CFO.
And we're joined with the mayor. Hi, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, Ms. Drummond? Excuse me. Debbie's on the phone. Hi, Debbie. Maybe, maybe not. Well, let's get started. Who's doing the presentation?
I am.
Hi, Lucinda.
Hello.
Go ahead, ma'am.
All right.
Sorry for the late start.
No problem. So the objective of my presentation today is to provide you with an update on where we are in regard to finance and IT business efficiencies. I mean, as we heard in the community dialogue, the public is saying, let's get more efficient in the terms of the way we operate our government. Also, as you know, we are all facing potential deficits with the budget next year due to the increasing costs of our labor contracts, et cetera. So we've been really focused in my area in terms of trying to deliver services at a lower cost. So what we've been doing is we've been looking at it from two different perspectives. The first perspective is the business processes themselves. And so what we did was we launched a project called the Business Improvement Project, where what we did was we looked at what is the cost to perform finance and accounting functions throughout all of the municipality, not just those folks that report to me. So the way we did this was we did a time and motion study where we interviewed everybody who touches PeopleSoft. And what we did was we asked them to report the amount of time that they spend on certain functions so that we could understand in total how much time was being spent. We looked at that information, we compared it to benchmarks, and we identified gaps in our performance relative to how other organizations perform these certain functions. Then we targeted processes for improvement and identified a future direction. What I'm going to do today is share with you where we plan to go with these particular areas. It's really important for us to look at these business processes because, one, our goal is to create efficiencies and reduce the cost to perform those services, but also it really positions us for an ERP implementation. As everyone knows, PeopleSoft was put in place in 1999. It's very old, it hasn't been updated, it's very expensive because it sits on the mainframe. So when looking to upgrade or choose a new path, it's very important to look at the business processes first. So that is the reason why these two particular projects are being done concurrently. So in regard to the business improvement process, I had two of my staff dedicated 100% of their time for 2 to 3 weeks to interview 38 different departments. There were 325 people right now that have access to PeopleSoft in our accounting system. That's a large number of people touching accounting data. So what they did was first they developed process flow diagrams so we would get an understanding of our current environment and be able to determine where are the bottlenecks, what are we doing today, and what this would do is provide a roadmap in terms of what we could do different in the future. We did the time and motion study, we did the benchmarks, and also what we did was we initiated a study with Oracle, which they did free of charge, and they came into our organization and they did also a process analysis and identified and suggested areas where we can improve our business processes. And then we also took a peek at what the new upgraded PeopleSoft would look like so that it would give us an idea of the potential for how we could leverage technology. We brought all of this information together and we've made some plans now in terms of how to move the organization forward. But what I want to do is show you some of the data that we gathered so that you can obtain some comfort in the methodology and the approach that we use. What you'll see on this graphic is an example of one of hundreds of process flow diagrams that were developed. And what this does is it provides a tool for us to start the process of re-engineering. And what it does is it documents where processes are, where are the handoffs in the organization, where are the bottlenecks, who is doing what with different pieces of paper and different processes. Another thing that we looked at was how things should work relative to the grant process. And so what this does is it shows, first of all, the overall process of a grant. You know, we identify an opportunity for a grant, we apply for the grant, we may award or then potentially amend the grant, we do progress reports. And then in the back end, from the accounting perspective, we're spending our money against the grants, we're seeking reimbursement from the granting agency, we close out the grants, and we're reporting the grants. Well, that's a pretty integrated process that currently is very fragmented, and it exists in Excel spreadsheets, Access databases, some of it's in PeopleSoft, some of it's just in various places throughout the municipality. And then in addition to managing that process, every time we step through it, the departments initiate it, the department heads approve it, the cost containment committee looks at it, OMB looks at it, and this is potentially for each step along the way. The risk department looks at it, legal does, I look at it after 2 or 3 folks in my department look at it before me, the city manager looks at it, purchasing department looks at it, and then you, the assembly, you approve it in its entirety. This process, in terms of going circular with so many folks, currently is done entirely manual. And it is hugely paper intensive and very, very cumbersome. So you may wonder, why is that important to me? Well, it's important because in 2009, we spent combined between federal and state grants $200 million. And if you'll notice the number at the bottom, we were managing 859 grants that were open in just 1 year. So if you can just imagine this hugely paper-intensive process for $200 million of grants, we're really likely to make errors. We're really likely to miss reports, and we're really likely to be begging state and federal agencies to not take the grant money away, which George and I just last week were on a phone call with one of the state agencies, asking them to just give us a little bit more time so we can get some reports in so they don't pull funding. So it's really critical for us to manage this process better. And I'm just sharing this with you as an example in terms of some of the inefficiencies that we have in our organization. So in regard to the time and motion data that we captured, what this graphic shows you, or this chart, is currently how much we are spending on certain accounting and finance functions, and the number of FTEs associated with that function. And then to the far right column, it identifies the number of FTEs that actually report up to me and work in the centralized environment. So what you can see is that, for example, in the payroll area, as an organization, we're spending $2.4 million to process payroll, and it's the equivalent of 23.6 FTEs throughout the municipality, and about 6 of them are actually within the finance area.
Jennifer has a question for you. Listen.
And is that all of the munis payroll, or is that, because isn't payroll sort of fragmented?
This is the equivalent of the fragmented payroll. However, it excludes ML&P and AWWU. And all of the information that I'm talking about does exclude those 2 entities. So what this is the consolidation of the 30% that one FTE spends maybe at Department A. Department B, you may have 3 or 4 spending 20 or 30%. So it's consolidating all of the time that is distributed throughout the enterprise in terms of how much time are we spending on payroll. The next line is general
Nobody has a
ledger.
question for you too.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So it excludes ML&P and AWW, but it includes the Port, Merrill Field, solid waste? Okay, thank you.
Please just continue, ma'am. Sorry.
No, that's fine. I encourage questions on clarification. General ledger, 10 and a half FTEs report to me, and 19 are providing this function in total. So the whole point of this is to gather the information so that I can understand what is my current environment? How much money are we spending on finance functions throughout the city? And where is this money being spent? In order for us to improve our processes, we have to first understand our environment. Secondly, then what we did was we looked at, well, what is the cost and the FTEs by department? So the controller's department and the treasury department, are at the top of the list, and that's what you would expect, because that's where the centralized function exists. But then as you go on down, you can see where some of the significant dollars are spent. M&O is spending $1 million plus and has 10 FTEs dedicated to finance and accounting functions. SWS is spending $1 million with 10 people dedicated to performing finance and accounting functions. Health and Human Services, $1.5 million, and on and on and on. So you can see where the head count is and what the dollar amounts are that supports accounting and finance functions. So now that we understand how much we're spending on certain functions, then what we did was we did a benchmark analysis. And we looked at some of the key benchmarks that are used by national organizations that measure the effectiveness and the efficiency of certain accounting and finance functions. And first of all, before I go into the details of the benchmarks, I want to point out that benchmarks are just directional indicators. People can pick apart benchmarks all day long to try to get them to be apples and apples. And I recognize that in terms of working with other companies as a consultant in terms of managing benchmarks. So I look at them from the perspective as, is there an opportunity for improvement based on these benchmarks? The first one is total finance as a percentage of revenues. And as you can see here, Anchorage, our number is around 3%. When I've been working with the Hackett Group, they said on an overall basis, the median performers are just below 1%, and world-class performers are just below 0.5%. So what this tells me is that as a whole, we have a significant opportunity to reduce our costs to get closer to what other companies and organizations spend in regard to finance. If you look at the bottom of the charts here, what you can see is a specific function graphic. And as you can see in the bottom left, what we did was we calculated the cost to process an invoice at MOA. And our cost is about $60 an invoice. And if you look at the bottom quartile, for example, for another benchmark from APQC, it's about $10. So we have a huge opportunity here to reduce this cost. So you may be wondering, why is it so expensive? Well, I think you know the answer. It's because our processes are antiquated, they're very manual, they're very paper intensive, and they're very distributed. In addition to looking at a cost benchmark, to the right you will see a productivity benchmark, which indicates how many invoices are actually processed per FTE. And as you can see here, the MOA, we process about 1,600 invoices per FTE. And when you compare that to bottom quartile performance, in terms of benchmarks, they're above 5,000. So this is an indication that the productivity of our staff in regard to processing invoices has a significant opportunity for improvement. The next area is in payroll. We looked at what is our cost per payroll transaction. So this would be the 26 pay period, 26 pay periods in the checks. And again, what we learned is we have a significant opportunity to reduce our cost structure associated with payroll. And a lot of this is due to the fact that we have payroll functions that reside within our departments. And so it's very decentralized, very distributed. We have many different ways that payroll is entered into, or time and attendance information is entered into the system. There are no standards in regard to time capture, and so we have a significant opportunity here to automate. If you look at the bottom graph, what you'll see is an example of an area where we did in fact automate. we made a big push at the beginning of this year to get our employees on direct deposit, meaning, it would be automatic and it would be paperless pay advice. In this area, you can see we are above world-class performance. So it's really fantastic that we were able to do something. We automated it. Our IT team, did this all in-house, and we delivered a really good product. So it's really encouraging to me to know that where we decide to automate, we can do it, and we've proven that we can. So based on the interviews, the benchmark data, and just a discussion of the departments to find out where are their bottlenecks and where is the area where we can most improve our process, what we did was we targeted some areas for initial implementation and for quick wins. And the first is, of course, in payroll. I know we've talked about it a lot internally about the need for electronic time cards and electronic timesheets. And so we began the process in terms of talking with Kronos, who is a top quartile performer in regard to software in terms of providing electronic timesheet solutions to organizations throughout the United States. And they currently have an implementation in place at ML&P. ML&P is using Kronos, and they're very happy with Kronos. So we already have an interface with Kronos built into PeopleSoft. So we were able to negotiate a very favorable pricing structure with Kronos that is focused on an implementation that would begin in the fourth quarter of this year. And so I'm very excited about this because what we'll be able to do is focus on employees entering time data directly into their computers for electronic time capture. And then for those employees, for example, who don't have access to computers, like let's say SWS truck drivers, what we have incorporated in our solution is they can use a cell phone and they can call in and they can have their time charged by project into a system that will then electronically create their timesheet. We also have planned to implement some card swipe facilities for automated data capture in some of the areas where the computer usage among the employees may be lower. So that will all be incorporated in a proposal that we will be submitting to you on Tuesday, and in that we will incorporate, our total cost of ownership for you to consider to move on through the process. We believe we can save significant savings if we move to electronic time cards. In the accounts payable area, we are looking to centralize the process and to automate a significant portion of it. Currently, vendors send invoices directly to departments. Departments then process them and make copies, and they're sending information back and forth. What we would plan to do in the future is to have all of the vendors send invoices centrally. We would scan them, we would record them into accounts payable, immediately knowing what our liabilities would be. They would be electronically routed to approvers for approval. They'll ensure the costs are appropriate, they code it, they route it back, we pay it. And then that scanned document also becomes the final record retention for our record retention program, and we destroy the invoice. What this will do is it'll extremely speed up the process, and it'll give us some controls over accounts payable right now that need to be improved. In the area of grants, you could see that hugely paper-intensive process. And so we have a solution where we could just go ahead and automate grants. We could take the current process and we could just start using something like PACE and automate it going through so that it could go through the system faster. But I'm concerned about automating an inefficient process. And so in this area, we're going to spend a little bit more time with a consultant to try to change that process, re-engineer the process, reduce the number of approvers, potentially, of people involved in the grants, and then also integrate a lot more of the grant management and the grant cost accounting so that we are not having to constantly talk with agencies about don't take away our grant funding because we failed to file the report on time. These are the kinds of issues that we are dealing with. In the accounts receivable area, billing and cash management, we have some processes in place now, for example, where we will receive, some of the departments will receive credit card payments. And then what they do is they print a report, and then based on what's on the report, they hand write out on a piece of paper a deposit, and then they'll put that through snail mail over here to Treasury, and then Treasury will rekey it into the system. So this is an obvious place for us to build some interfaces where we can just start going computer to computer and eliminate a lot of that manual processing. Also, that will improve our accuracy levels. In the general ledger, so that there's a lot of journal entries that are being managed right now in the department areas. So here what we're doing is we are looking at consolidation and using economy of scale to leverage that whole area. The last area that was discussed was purchase requisitions. Departments indicated that the process was hugely inefficient, extremely time-consuming. It's all paper-intensive. So we'll be exploring turning on some of the online requisitioning functioning that is available in current PeopleSoft, or if that doesn't work, using Stellent, which is the PACE tool, to route that through until we have a new ERP in place. As we go through and we evaluate what these new processes are, we will be doing a very methodical approach. And this is to just give you an example of how the new processes will be designed. It's the same as the way we documented the current processes. We will be going through and identify who will be responsible for what portion of the process. And this is just an example of the accounts payable solution that I just described to you. So as we transform to efficient processes, it's very important that there be guiding principles in place that the organization can understand and to adhere to. And the key, first of all, is that the business requirements of the departments are met. And it will be very important for us to sit down, work with them, understand what their business requirements are, because our goal is absolutely not to cripple operations. Our goal is to have the departments focus on what they do best in terms of providing their service, and the accounting and finance area will focus on what we do best, which is accounting and finance. We'll be looking at standardization, economy of scale, and end-to-end process analysis. So as I indicated with the credit card, we are not going to be printing reports and then re-entering information into systems. That's just 1950s, and we need to get over it. In terms of establishing teams, we have selected individuals from various departments to participate with us on what we're calling our expert implementation teams. And what this will do is it will minimize the risk associated with this significant of a change in terms of going forward. And of course, then they will be charged with the development of detailed implementation plans. So you may be thinking, well, what kind of benefits could we expect to achieve as a result of trying to transform our processes? Well, what here I do is I look to other organizations and use what they experienced. And according to the Hackett Group, when organizations embark on these type of initiatives, 70% of them planned to save about 20% or more in their current cost structure. But then they went back and they surveyed, because they asked them, well, then how much did you actually save? And 60% of them did actually save 20% or more. Also, in terms of the American Payroll Association, they're indicating that when you look to consolidate, you could expect to save anywhere from 1 to 4% of your total payroll. So again, these are indicators and are directional in terms of what can we do to make our processes more efficient and effective.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Mike.
The difference between the 10% who didn't reach that 20% cost, any ideas what the 60% who did reach it, what they did differently, why they managed to achieve their goals and the others didn't?
Well, there's a lot of success factors associated with consolidations. And, you know, I have the list of some of the issues that were faced, and I can send that to you. I don't have it with me, but I could go ahead and do it.
Thank you.
It's hard. It's all about change management. And this is hard for us to do this. There's no doubt. In addition to saving costs and becoming more efficient, another important goal to me is to become more effective and to have better processes in place that focus on cash. When I was in private sector, cash is king. And really, truly, I look at it the same way here in terms of managing government. If we improve our grant processes, and we have better integrated tools, and we streamline the approval process, we'll be able to get our cash in the door a lot quicker. Right now, we're spending money up front, and every day that we don't submit the reports to get reimbursement from the state, we're losing money in our cash pool in terms of not being able to get a return on that. Right now, our federal cash fund account is negative in terms of the fund balance. And the reason is because we're spending money faster than we're seeking reimbursement. To me, for $200 million that we're spending on grant, that's a travesty. And it's all because of our own internal processes, and it's a huge opportunity for improvement. In terms of accounts payable, I had the analysts run a retrieval to find out how much money are we paying early, meaning how much are we paying prior to contract terms. The number was $245 million was paid early. So if you take the value of that $245 million and invest it in the cash pool, that's $150,000 with today's extremely low interest rates. So that's just another area where if we just, tighten everything up and sharpen our pencil, we have an opportunity to better manage our accounts payable. Collections of revenues in some areas, and I know that there's a meeting here today to talk about some accounts receivable issues in a department. We have a significant opportunity here to tighten this up. I mean, I think it's probably appropriate for best-of-breed type billing systems to exist in departments, but we have a really awesome treasurer who is doing a fabulous job doing collections on a centralized basis here at City Hall. And I think if you noted, the revenue forecast for the end of this year showed an additional $300,000 in collections due to just some of the changes that he made in terms of procedures. So we want to capitalize on that in terms of collections for other departments. In terms of the accounts payable area, we will be able to better understand our liabilities if we have those invoices coming into accounts payable first. Some of you may recall in 2008, there was $3.6 million of unrecorded liabilities that did not get in the capper because the invoices were sitting on people's desks. Even last year, after all the work that we did to try to get the liabilities all recorded, the number was significantly lower, but it was still, I think, around $1 million. Is that right?
500,000.
500,000. So we reduced it a lot, but we really want to make sure that we're managing the cash as best as we can. Additionally, we need to establish standards. Things are being done differently throughout the departments. By consolidating accountants, we can leverage the skill set of the accountants, getting accountants working together and getting advice and direction from folks like Dave who are certified in accounting. And lastly, I really believe this will result in improved internal controls and better accounting reports. So that was what we are doing in the business area in regard to accounting and finance. And as I mentioned earlier, this is the foundation for looking at an ERP. So now I'm going to switch topics and talk to you about IT. And IT is our tool to improve the efficiency of the organization. But the first thing that we did this year was we established some governance associated with IT. We have what is called an IT steering committee, and we meet every other week, and we look at all of the IT proposals throughout the enterprise. And we are looking at them from the perspective to ensure that they meet our standards, they fit in our infrastructure, that the spending considers security, it considers whether or not it's a standard that would conform to the overall direction that Gail has put forth. We look at it to determine, is this really in conformance with our enterprise approach? And what we've done is we've required everyone now to provide a 5-year total cost of ownership analysis, including a return on investment. And what this does is it ensures that we really understand our IT purchases. We're looking at our licenses, we're looking at our maintenance fees out 5 years, we're understanding what our hardware requirements are, and we're looking at our infrastructure. That way we can get a really good picture of what we're buying before we buy. Right now we spend about $33 million a year. At least that's the budget on IT. Now, this number does include ML&P and AWWU. $33 million, that is a lot of money. So what we are doing is our goal is to make sure that we are leveraging that investment as best as we can to get the best return for the city. We've developed an IT strategic plan, and I think we've gone over that a little bit in previous discussions, but we are headed directionally towards virtualization, both for hardware as well as desktops, standardization, and consolidation. Now, all the studies indicate that organizations that have moved in this direction have saved 10 to 20%. Also, we will soon be starting a deployment study of our IT resources. We have hired Excipio, which is an IT consulting organization, to come in, and they will be looking at our organization structure, the number of resources that we have throughout the city, excluding ML&P and AWWU, and they will be providing us with information about how to best utilize those resources and how to best deploy them. And then lastly, we are looking to upgrade our critical IT tools, and that would be the CAMA system, which is our tax valuation and billing system for property taxes, and our ERP system.
I'm sorry, what's ERP? I missed that.
Oh, I'm sorry. ERP is like PeopleSoft. It's Enterprise Resource Planning.
Thank you.
And that is the way everybody refers to these systems these days. Okay? So in regard to our evaluations, CAMA is our property tax system. It's 25 years old. We are the only entity in the world that is using this version of CAMA. It extremely limits our ability. I know, it's just amazing to me. It extremely limits our ability to develop any efficiencies from it. It's on the mainframe. It is unsupported by the vendor, and we just have to get rid of it. Okay, we have to upgrade. And PeopleSoft, as I just explained, our processes are inefficient, the cost structure is prohibitive, you saw that with all of the benchmarks, and we are on an outdated version.
Lucinda?
Yes?
Please kill off PeopleSoft. It's been a lousy system since we got it. I can tell you numerous administrations. And the mayor was with me when Wirch was mayor and PeopleSoft didn't work, and it still doesn't work. And I remember the time we were going to cancel it, the owner of the company came up to tell us how good it was. It's not been improved. I would love to see that thing go away. There has to be a better system out there than PeopleSoft.
Well, that is exactly what I want to share with you next. Actually, let me step back. I really want to focus on the bullet down below, which is upgrade PeopleSoft or implement a new ERP. There are definitely advantages to upgrading PeopleSoft, and I want to step back, and I really want to hear and make sure you understand. I heard your comment about PeopleSoft, and I've heard all of you say how bad PeopleSoft is. But when we're looking at software, a lot of the functionality is about how you implement. It's not the software itself. It is how you implement, it's how you set up the tables, it's how you manage your business processes to the software. And we haven't upgraded it. And so if we had upgraded it, we would be in a much better position than we are today. So that is the reason why we looked at we decided to take the approach to look at, should we upgrade it or should we just get rid of it and start anew? And so I want to share with you that analysis. What we did was we looked at the capabilities of the current generation of PeopleSoft. They came in, Oracle owns PeopleSoft. They came in, they showed us what the current generation does. And we had the users of PeopleSoft, people from the departments, the ones that are in the system every day, come and look at the demo and make and provide observations to us about whether or not that software in the upgraded version would be more efficient and would meet their business requirements. We heard an overwhelming yes. But to me, the next question then is, well, what would be the cost to do that? So we were working with PeopleSoft to get an estimate of what the cost would be to upgrade the licenses, and then we were working with a system implementer to find out how much would it cost to implement this new version. And based on the information that we got from both of those, it was our conclusion that we could not do a sole source, if you will, upgrade to PeopleSoft, present that to you based on the numbers, because the numbers were too high. Also, what we did is yes, Paul?
You have an idea what the number was?
Yeah, I do. It combined, it would be like $3.5 to $8 million, somewhere in that range, depending on the number of modules that we implemented and depending on the robustness of the reporting tools. And so based on that, and then considering that in light of some information that we also got from an independent consultant called Soft Resources, we felt it was very important that we do a thorough analysis, which is to go out and look at other options entirely for our ERP system and then compare that to the upgraded information that we got from PeopleSoft. And what was really valuable from Soft Resources is what we were trying to learn from them is, do we really need a Tier 1 ERP solution, which is ERP that is the Cadillac. It's Oracle, SAP, Microsoft Dynamics. They have every bell and every whistle, and they will tell you it can do anything. They will. And, I've been through this before at other companies. They will tell you it can do whatever. But the question is, can we buy? Yeah, you say whatever. They'll say, yeah, we can do whatever. We could buy that, but the question is, assuming you approve it, the question is, do we really need that? And do we really have the constant training budget to dedicate to a Tier 1 solution? So we were looking at Tier 2 solutions as well, and we've concluded that as we go forward, we want to include Tier 2 vendors as potential candidates to replace our ERP system. A Tier 2 would be like a Ford compared to a Cadillac in regard to an ERP environment. This is the methodology that we are going through in terms of evaluating our ERP. We've already gone through and done an extensive documentation of our business requirements. We have reviewed this with the Gartner Group. Those of you who may or may not know the Gartner Group is a nationally renowned independent IT consulting organization, and we subscribe to their intellectual capital database, and they provide advice. So they have looked at our business requirements, and they have said that we did a fabulous job. And to me, this is really paramount as we go forward, because these are the business requirements that go out with the RFP to vendors, and the vendors have to be telling us that they can meet these business requirements in order to even propose on our project. But what we're looking at is to get the RFP for this out here soon in September, and to receive proposals back from bidders in the month of October. And then what we will do is shortlist and we will reduce down to 3 potential ERP candidates, and then we will invite them to come in and do demos of their product. And then at that point in time, the users in the departments, in my shop, anybody that uses PeopleSoft, they will come in with the business requirements in hand, and they will be checking things off to ensure that the software meets their requirement. And additionally, we're going to ask the users to comment on the complexity of the use. Is this an easy-to-use software, or is this something that's really hard? If it's really hard, we will be just where we are today with PeopleSoft, in that people will hate it, they won't learn it, and it'll be very difficult to get the efficiencies out of the product.
Paul has a question for you, Lieutenant Paul.
I was going to wait till you get finished up, but I don't know if you're there yet. I'm going back to the last slide, looking at this process here, which is good. I'm assuming when it says ERP/upgrade methodology here, looking at the slide, you're talking about upgrading PeopleSoft as we have it now versus, and using a tier 2 vendor versus a brand new product replacing PeopleSoft altogether, or, I'm trying to get my...
Yeah, good question. What we're doing is we're doing a concurrent review. So we're going to look at the cost to upgrade through an RFP, because the costs I got were rough order magnitude back of an envelope cost. So we're looking at those, and we're sending out an RFP for that. At the same time, we're sending out an RFP to do a completely new implementation with different vendors. And as a result, we will have a very thorough analysis of really what is the best direction to take the city. And it's really important to note that in regard to the selection of a solution, we are looking at a 20-year solution. We are looking for a vendor that will be our partner, that we can upgrade with, and that we will be able to continue to deploy best practices.
Well, with that, can you, if maybe you don't know this, you may not have been here, but maybe you know the industry better than I do. Was PeopleSoft a tier 1 or a tier 2 company when we got them this package?
I would guess they were a tier 1 company.
A tier 1 company?
Yeah.
Okay. I hadn't heard of them, but I'd heard of the other ones.
No, yeah, they were a tier 1 company in '99.
Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This discussion, Tier 1 versus Tier 2, have you looked at or do you plan to look at how other local government entities, roughly the size of the municipality of Anchorage, do they go Tier 1, do they go Tier 2? How's it work for them? Have you looked at that already, or is that something you plan to do?
We touched on that briefly with Soft Resources, and we asked them to give us suggestions on who would be good ERP vendors for a city our size based on what they have seen as successful implementations in others. They gave us a combination of Tier 1 and Tier 2 vendors that would meet our business requirements. Yes.
I like that you're thinking about that, because if we can do the same job without going with a Tier 1 vendor, that makes sense to me, provided somebody has a good track record and it's worked. If it's going to fail, it's good to see if it's failed somewhere else before, and then we can avoid it. Let somebody else make our mistakes for us.
But it's not going to fail here.
Right.
Trust me, it will not fail.
Bill, and then Jennifer, and then Harriet.
I have two. One is when you talk about your fiscal management systems, are you talking about the operational day-to-day nuts and bolts, including the capital management of say, the projects that we see through PM&E and the whole global, or are we focusing on more as a business integration model that's day-to-day nuts and bolts? What's your scope here?
Good question.
And my next question, if you can answer at the same time, is what have you looked at forward thinking as it relates to the budget that we're getting ready to discuss? What premises have you already put in there that this is where we're headed, and this budget assumptions that I've already made?
First of all, the functionality that we're looking at in the ERP is financials, which is GL, AP, AR, purchasing, HR, projects, grants.
Taxes.
Well, taxes would be AR. CAMA is actually the system that calculates the basis for the tax, and the tax bills go out of CAMA, and then they interface into PeopleSoft. So those are the functions that we are looking at, and projects is a key component of that.
The PM&E groups
Right.
and our interface agreements with the state and all that stuff that would do it. So you captured a lot of it.
Yeah,
okay.
that's that. And then in regard to the budget, We have a placeholder in the budget in regard to capitalization of labor associated with the time that folks may spend on the development of the systems, as well as a placeholder for the debt service associated with the loan.
In the purchase of the new software, how about in terms of the efficiency gains that you mentioned earlier and the other things? Have you been able to put a number to those to influence this year's budget?
No.
So when you talk about fourth quarter returns for the electronic payroll, how will that affect our budget numbers would be a question I have for you as we get into the budget discussions.
Yeah, the answer I would say at this point is it's premature to identify a specific number. I mean, we will estimate some pretty rough order magnitude benefits in terms of calculating the 5-year total cost of ownership and ROI, but it's hard. You could see the numbers. The Hackett Group, they said 20%. You know, other organizations have said 20%. We will target that.
Let's end a couple of quick questions, one from Jennifer, then one from Harriet, and we need to finish up your slides,
Okay.
ma'am.
Quickly, and you and I kind of talked about this, and I hate to put you on a spot, but as you're reviewing these RFPs, do you keep in the back of your mind future consolidation of other municipal organizations?
Absolutely. If you'll notice, the fourth bullet on that is scalability. Scalability will be really critical in terms of the analysis. We don't want to buy a software tool that fits us today, but not tomorrow. And that's a good ERP vendor will have scalability built into their R&D. They just do.
Just briefly, one of my understandings with PeopleSoft is we were behind the 8 ball at the get-go with it because the implementation software, we never kept up to it
Right.
even when we first employed it. And so that will be kept in mind when we're going forward.
Absolutely. The total cost of ownership that will be presented will include ongoing maintenance, and it will be paid because we will not be able to get upgrades or enhancements without making the maintenance payments.
Harriet, quick question, ma'am.
Any opportunities with the school district? Because it's really interesting to hear the description of how you intend to get into it, at the Tier 1 and the Tier 2. What it sounds like to me is that in 1999, the city went Tier 1 with PeopleSoft, and the school district went Tier 2 or even 3 with Vitech, and Vitech essentially experimented on the school district. And it took them 2 or 3 years, and everybody hated it, but it eventually worked really, really well. Are there any opportunities in terms of scalability?
Actually, Gail has initiated conversations with Jane, the CIO over there, to talk about what they use to see if there are any components of that we could leverage over here. It really will be what Jennifer indicated, scalability. You know, do they have it set up with the infrastructure that's scalable? And how customized is it? We looked at their electronic time card. It's a homegrown, built from scratch, customized time card. We need something more robust, something that can handle the complexities of all the different unions and the earning codes, and that we can grow with and continue to get best practices.
Thanks.
Cindy, you want to finish up your last slide? I'm
Yeah.
sorry, ma'am.
I mean, to me, I'll just summarize. In order to have sustainable savings going forward, we need to make our processes more efficient. And in order to make our processes more efficient, we need better tools in our toolbox. We need technology. And so we need to invest in technology. It's going to cost us money, but we will get ROI on this in terms of going forward, but we need to make the investment today. But in order to be successful, it takes more than just spending money. It takes commitment, and it takes everyone up for the challenge, because it's going to be hard. Change is difficult, and it means conflict. And, you know, we're committed to making it happen, and I'm just hoping that everyone here will support us and help us make these changes.
Thank you, Cindy. I appreciate you being here. This work session is over with.